A new member of our committee from New York, Mr. Zeldin, you recognize.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, and I appreciate you recognizing that I'm a new member because I'm going to ask a new question. In one of Mr. Kaufman's questions with regards to going from a 42% estimate, going up 8% over the course of the year, Mr. Milson, you referred to a term called an artificial budget. Can you tell me what an artificial budget is?
When the court decision came down and they said that we had failed to deliver a design that could be built for the contract amount of 604, we had been measuring progress against 604, and we were measuring it as a term of art where we use work in place. So what we paid for was then evaluated against what the total contract was. Well, the reality, what the civilian board told us is that the number was completely wrong, and so that's the artificial piece that we were measuring against. So when we were, there were fact sheets that showed that I think that we were as high as 62% at one time out there, but that was against that 604 number for what we had put in place. And when the board came down and said that number doesn't hold any water, that's the artificial piece that I was talking about.
I also understand from the questioning that you need an authorization by June, but that it's going to be at least several months before we know how much money you need. I'm just trying to understand, would we find out how much money you need before you were actually getting the money?
There is two steps in here. The first thing that's required will be, or requested, will be an increase in the authorization in order to allow us to continue to operate during this interim period of time. For reasons that were explained earlier, the best course of action, we believe, is that we keep construction underway at this project rather than shuttering, mothballing, and demobilizing activity on the project. So we will need an increase in the ceiling prior to June, probably within the next 60 days or so, in order to support a higher level of spending during this interim period. Then there'll have to be another one later on for the full construction cost.
Right now, the contractor is working at the site. What budget is the contractor operating off of? What are their numbers?
When we put the interim contract in place, what we did is we funded it with $70 million, $50 million to cover month-to-month new work that's being undertaken based upon a detailed schedule that's being developed between Kiewit-Turner and VA that focuses work on critical path items. Plus, there's about $20 million available for settlement of subcontractor disputes. And so we're going to be allocating another $31 million into the contract, and we've got some amount of money left that was unobligated under the contract that we'll also use to settle subcontractor disputes.
The $50 to $70 million numbers, is that between now and June? Is that per month?
That will likely, what we did in the interim contract is we put those amounts in place for a 90-day period of time. So whichever we run out of first, time or money, that ends that contract. Both parties reserve the right to extend it. And our expectation is to extend it because we don't believe the Corps will be in a position to enter into a contract to complete the project until probably June.
Mr. Takano was asking you about the investigation. Is it possible that people who are responsible for negligence are still working on this project?
I think it's unlikely. As I mentioned, we've changed the reporting relationship for construction and facilities management. So that removes one particular senior executive. I mentioned earlier that we had also changed out the project executive and the contracting officer. I would tell you the project executive we have on the scene now and have had since April is a star, young fellow named Kevin Lindsay that came to us from the Corps of Engineers.
Mr. Caldwell, real quick question: has the Army Corps ever built a hospital before?
Yes, we have. Within the last, let's say, since 2007, about 12 either have been completed or under construction.
Okay, great. So this was very informative for me, Chairman Miller. I've heard this new term of artificial budgeting. Ms. Brownlee was asking for a timeline of when she's going to get a timeline. asking for funding without knowing what the cost is. I came from the state legislature in New York with $200,000. Our county, which has the second highest vets population of any county in the country, highest in the state, with $200,000, we created a program for PTSD, hundreds of veterans, and we're saving lives with $200,000. And the concern is when you're $500 million over budget, you're taking money away from other programs that can save lives and give care to our veterans who need it and deserve it. So I actually think the whole thing is pretty outrageous, and I'm very grateful Chairman Miller's having this hearing, and Mr. Kaufman is advocating so hard to keep us informed.
Thank you, Mr. Zeldin.